Why the global fertilizer crisis is quietly redrawing every modern border. Look closer. This isn't just global commerce. It's the lifeblood of 7 billion people, packed into containers and shipped across oceans. Now imagine this lifeline is severed. Wheat fields are parched, not from drought, but from a silent chemical scarcity. One invisible supply chain is failing. It's not just raising prices on your grocery shelf. It's quietly reshaping our world, from economies to borders. As key trade routes seize up, the cost of feeding a family jumps, first in the margins, then in the most sensitive corners of the globe. To understand the crisis, we must understand the scale of what we are built on. For centuries, population was limited by the land. But then, we synthesized abundance. Fertilizer is the hidden, invisible foundation of modern population density, allowing more people to live closer together than ever before. The sobering fact is this: up to 40% of the world's population exists because of synthetic nitrogen, the core ingredient of modern fertilizer. Yet, the power to feed this population is dangerously concentrated. Only a handful of countries dominate the global production of the 3 key components: nitrogen, phosphate, and potash. These states, often driven by political or economic isolation, hold the keys to global food security. When they close the tap, the world feels it instantly. The fertilizer price spikes we're seeing now are 3 times higher and more sustained than the last major global food crisis in 2008. The geopolitical ripple effects begin right here, at the crop line. For farmers, the choice is impossible: plant less or risk planting nothing at all. This is the yield collapse. Cutting fertilizer is not just an agricultural setback. It quickly turns food insecurity into an immediate local crisis for fragile states. Scarcity fractures social and state stability, intensifying mass migration and applying immense, often violent pressure on established borders. Borders are not just lines on a map. They are the interface where food, water, and human desperation meet. And right now, that interface is buckling. This is what the silent crisis is creating. We see the geopolitical impact of energy, of oil, but few recognize the power of something so microscopic. State power, national stability, and even the ability to control borders is built on far more than armies and wealth. It's fundamentally built on basic nutrients. The next century's map may not be drawn by treaties, but by the hunger we fail to prevent. Look closely at the foundation of modern human civilization. It is not concrete, nor steel, but something far more elemental. We explore our profound, yet rarely acknowledged, dependence on synthetic nutrients. Across the globe, industrial agriculture feeds billions. Its efficiency is a modern marvel. Yet, these modern food systems are inseparable from synthetic fertilizer. The journey of these vital nutrients begins far from the farm. Observe the industrial heart of the process: massive chemical plants transforming air into vital compounds. Nitrogen, critical for plant growth, is synthetically produced through energy-intensive processes like the Haber-Bosch method. Other essential elements demand extraction from the earth itself. From deep within the crust, phosphate and potash are unearthed. Phosphate and potash, the other key components of fertilizer, must be mined and processed from finite geological deposits. This extraction powers vast agricultural output. Vast stretches of land dedicated to grain production rely entirely on these external inputs. These extracted nutrients artificially boost crop yields, making unprecedented global grain production possible. The true beneficiary of this industrial-scale feeding system is us. Modern civilization thrives on the bounty enabled by these artificial means. Billions of lives depend on these nutrients, distributed through complex and often fragile global systems. Our ingenuity has granted us immense abundance. But the solution to feeding our population is inherently linked to a handful of globally traded minerals and vast industrial capacity. This reliance highlights a core vulnerability. Our civilization's foundation is built upon processed and globally traded minerals. Subtle, cinematic music begins. Welcome to a deep dive into one of the most critical, yet overlooked crises facing our world today: the global fertilizer shortage. To understand the crisis, we must first understand the product. Fertilizer is the foundation of modern food production, directly influencing global crop yields. These flourishing fields, producing the food that feeds billions, rely entirely on it. Fertilizer is the silent industrial engine driving our global food supply, a vital link that few people ever see. The first domino to fall in this complex crisis is energy. Natural gas is a crucial feedstock for nitrogen-based fertilizers. When gas prices skyrocket, the cost of making fertilizer follows immediately. The recent surge in global energy costs, amplified by geopolitical volatility, was a direct shot at fertilizer producers worldwide. With the economics suddenly upside down, the logical industrial response was unavoidable. Facing unsustainable input costs, fertilizer factories from Europe to Asia were forced to slow down, or in some cases, completely halt production. This sudden manufacturing chill instantly squeezed the global supply of essential crop nutrients, far before they ever reached the fields. But the crisis was exacerbated by the second major driver, geopolitics. Major fertilizer exporting nations became entangled in war, sanctions, and strategic export restrictions. Political decisions were actively choking off the flow of product, creating artificial scarcity where fertilizer supplies already struggled. The final choke point was the logistics system itself. Fertilizer production is highly concentrated in a few regions, making the supply chain exceptionally fragile and dependent on smooth global shipping. Pre-existing disruptions in global freight and shipping only compounded the problem, slowing down the movement of remaining product. With supply choked at every turn, the inevitable market reaction quickly took hold. Scarcity drove prices to historic highs, pushing essential inputs out of reach for many farmers globally. This directly threatens the viability of farms and, crucially, the yield of future harvests, impacting food security for everyone. What we see is not a random shortage. It is the predictable result of deeply interconnected systems, where energy dependency, geopolitical conflict, and food security violently collide. The fertilizer crisis is a clear warning about the fragility of our modern globalized world. This is the story of how three simple chemicals dictate the destiny of nations. The foundation of global stability rests upon an unseen crisis, the diminishing supply of synthetic fertilizer. Across continents, the green promise of the harvest begins to wither, turning fields of plenty into landscapes of dust and drought. Modern civilization is built on a narrow chemical equation. When the vital nutrient inputs stop flowing, the very foundation of human sustenance cracks. This is where the crisis begins. A fertilizer shortage means failed harvests. Yields plummet, and the ripple effect hits national economies instantly. The ground refuses to give. What little is harvested cannot meet the demands of a growing population. The cost of this shortage is tallied not just in bushels of grain, but in soaring inflation that grips the world. As staples vanish, food prices soar uncontrollably. Governments face a stark choice: civil unrest or massive, unsustainable intervention. The government, desperate to stabilize its volatile population, pours billions into massive, often unsustainable subsidies. This injection of capital may temporarily mask the crisis, but it drains national reserves and only delays the inevitable reckoning. When basic survival is threatened, the fragile trust between citizen and state instantly erodes. The crisis moves from the field to the street. Agricultural decline, once a logistical problem, quickly turns into broader political instability, manifesting in demonstrations and demands for change. From the capital to the provinces, the ruling power struggles to manage a public demanding food security, not excuses. Food scarcity doesn't respect sovereignty. As hunger drives desperation, people move away from barren land toward imagined opportunity. Internal displacement strains resources, creating volatile demographic shifts within a nation already struggling to feed itself. When food systems weaken, borders cease being abstract lines on maps. They become pressure zones, shaped by hunger, trade leverage, and the desperate calculus of survival. The crisis shifts global power. Nations become strategically dependent on those who control the vital chemical inputs and the means of delivery. From fertilizer to energy to grain, commodities become tools. Food is weaponized, becoming the ultimate instrument of trade leverage in a zero-sum geopolitical game. This is a new era of vulnerability, where domestic food production determines a country's freedom of action on the world stage. The consequences of agricultural collapse are not confined to the rural periphery. They penetrate every level of national stability and global power. The geopolitics of the future is not just about oil or microchips. It is fundamentally about nitrogen, potassium, and phosphate. It is the pressure zone where hunger meets global power, and the stability of the world is decided one harvest at a time. Welcome to the fertilizer frontier. An unseen crisis is quietly redrawing the global map, not with armies, but with supply chains. We often talk about energy or technology as the ultimate levers of power, but the most fundamental crisis is happening beneath our feet: fertilizer. The difference between life and scarcity, between a thriving harvest and barren ground, often comes down to a handful of industrial nutrients. In the modern world, borders are increasingly shaped not only by armies or treaties, but by the supply systems that determine who can feed themselves and who cannot. The states that control the raw components of fertilizer, natural gas for nitrogen, or vast mineral deposits for phosphate and potash have gained silent but immense political leverage. Watch the trade routes. They are the new arteries of global power. A few key exporting nations now hold the keys to global food production. In exchange for these essential nutrients, fertilizer-rich states demand political favors, influence trade agreements, and solidify economic dependencies globally. But for the vast majority of the world, this is a crisis of vulnerability. Dependence on foreign fertilizer is a ticking time bomb. When supply chains break or prices spike due to geopolitics, the shelves empty quickly. Food scarcity is the direct result of nutrient scarcity. Import-dependent countries are strategically vulnerable. Their national stability and the very health of their populations is held hostage to global supply chain disruptions. The game has changed. The new geopolitics isn't just about resource extraction, it's about farmland strategy. Wealthy nations and powerful corporations are rapidly acquiring vast swaths of food-producing land globally. They are securing their own food future, whatever the cost. Control over land, reliable water access, sustainable energy. These are converging to become the new political currency, making traditional borders less relevant than the control of critical resources. As the crisis deepens, we see regional realignments. Nations are abandoning old political alliances to secure new, pragmatic ones based on need. Trade deals are being signed, new blocs are emerging, all centered on guaranteeing fertilizer supply, grain access, and long-term food stability. Nations that can successfully feed themselves or secure robust alliances with those who can are charting a new, independent course on the world stage. What does the future map look like? It's not the one we learned in school. It is a map where political boundaries mean less than access to essential life resources: nutrients, water, energy, and grain. The quiet crisis of fertilizer is revealing the ultimate determinant of a nation's fate and future: who can feed themselves and who cannot. Welcome to the concluding chapter of our documentary on the global fertilizer crisis. We have explored the fragility of modern agriculture, but the implications of the nutrient shortage stretch far beyond the farm. The sight of empty depots, once symbols of abundance, now stands as a stark monument to a critical vulnerability. The fertilizer crisis is not merely a problem of farming, limited to yields and harvest reports. The true core problem is how this chemical dependence has exposed the brittle foundations of global power. Across stressed farmland, where soil cracks under weak sunlight, the promise of the Green Revolution is beginning to fail. It is a systemic shock to global stability, turning the simple act of eating into a highly volatile geopolitical concern. The fallout is both economic and tragically human. The inflationary pressure of fertilizer scarcity is felt directly in the cost of every meal. And as food security collapses, rising food costs and shortages push desperate populations across local and international boundaries, fueling new migration routes. This crisis exposes the points of failure in the global system, our ultimate vulnerabilities. The flow of essential nutrients relies on a handful of vulnerable trade choke points, narrow maritime passages, and strategic rail links. The choke points of trade become flashpoints of geopolitical tension, where a handful of nations hold disproportionate power over the world's dinner table. This shortage is the ultimate test of our modern global system. Watch as the map blurs. A world whose political boundaries are being tested not by military might, but by the fundamental chemistry of soil itself. Our world's political boundaries are being tested by the chemistry of soil, revealing a hierarchy of control far more potent than traditional warfare. We are left with a sharp, undeniable conclusion about where true power now resides. Look closely at the earth that sustains us. In the modern age, The power to shape borders may belong not only to soldiers and diplomats, but to the nations that control the nutrients feeding the world.